Now, finally, some common sense, as the Court of Appeal has banned the excuse that fear of the climate crisis is a legitimate belief. Yes, in a blow to the woke eco-maniacs everywhere, this last line of defence that has got them all off jail time and time again has now been confined to the history books. Joining me live right now is former Commander of Specialist Operations, Mr Ramm. Roy, very good evening to you. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Some of these eco-nutters have been just literally taking the mickey out of the police, out of the law, out of the judicial system for ages and ages and ages. We saw them time and time again, getting pulled off the M25, being taken to the police station, being released, and then going straight back to the M25. So is this as significant a manoeuvre and a decision as I'd like to think it is?
Yeah, it's very important, Mike. And credit to the Attorney General for looking at it following the acquittal of demonstrators who sort of said, well, if you'd known how important the issue was that caused me to chuck paint all over your premises, you'd have been okay with it. Yeah. I mean, it was an absurd decision at that court level. So when the AG took it to the Court of Appeal, and we've got this judgment now, which is, as you rightly said, I mean, it's just common sense. You cannot give protesters this absurd license where they say, well, I've damaged your building by chucking paint over it, or I've slashed your paintings in a gallery because, I've got this very strong political or philosophical belief that kind of legitimises my actions. I think it doesn't need a lawyer to see how stupid it was.
Well, exactly right. You might as well start robbing banks and saying, I've got a sort of, a thing against capitalism, so that means that I can rob banks with impunity and I can get off with it.
Yeah, I met a few robbers in my time, and the redistribution of wealth as a philosophical defence was not one that was ever raised, but the spectre of it is quite fearful. But, I mean, getting back to the point of the day, we have to see proper judgments closing down some of these activities which cause enormous distress to most of the public and cause damage to property. It's just not acceptable.
No, and also because, of course, we've heard from them recently that they're going to have different tactics this year. The Just Stop Oil Brigade last month said they're going to start protesting outside people's homes. We've seen a couple of them being arrested for delivering letters to individual homes of individual MPs. And as far as I'm concerned, I know they say, oh, we're only doing what the postman does. That's intimidatory behaviour. If you're a politician and you've got people turning up outside your house where your family live, I don't think that's acceptable.
No, I think that's right. And you have to look at the wider context of it. OK, people go into politics, and I think, a thick skin is something that's required. But everybody's entitled to a home life and to enjoy the quiet enjoyment of their homes. And, MPs like all of us, got wives, families, husbands and children. And it's not right to focus on their personal lives for what's going on in their professional life. Westminster is the place to lobby. All right, asked to go and see them in their constituency offices. But I think that, private addresses should absolutely be, off the radar.
Well, as I say, it was only, I think, last week that one of those Just Stop Oil regulars, Phoebe somebody or other, who comes from a very posh family and went to a £41,000 a year sponsored private school, she was arrested for taking a letter to Emily Thornberry's house. But today, and I think we've got a little bit of footage of this, more of them then went and attacked Emily Thornberry at a public meeting that she was at. I think we can have a look at it.
I'm very sorry to interrupt them. Speaking of the government not acting as it should, in 2020, Emily Thornberry said that we have no time for cowardice in the face of the climate crisis. And yet, at this crucial historic moment, Labour are rolling back their commitments to the climate. We need Labour to be brave, to not be cowardly at this moment. We need you to make a commitment at this moment to revoke the Tory licences for new oil and gas infrastructure that will lock us on to the worst pathways of global warming and climate catastrophe.
The Labour need to wake up and smell the coffee. Everyone else is
So there we are, yet another exhibition of complete and utter tomfoolery. And basically, these two characters from Just Stop Oil, now they're throwing orange confetti because it's slightly better than throwing paint, I suppose. But they're disrupting a meeting. Nobody really wants them there. And they're basically demanding that Emily Thornberry cancels her membership of the Labour Party and commits to leaving it because they're not going to cancel Tory oil and gas licences that have been put out. But you'll love this one, Roy, because guess what their names are? Casper and Genevieve.
Right. Well, yeah, you know, Jasper and Genevieve, I think what they do at events, when they behave like that, you know, at public events, they risk generating a backlash from people who are there to listen to legitimate arguments. And it's the kind of behaviour that it invites challenge and invites them getting thrown out, perhaps, you know, not necessarily by the conference organisers, but other people that are there. And it's inviting disorder. And I think, you know, it kind of undermines the strength of their arguments. And I don't think they see that.
Right. And do you think this might change now the way perhaps that the police operate when they're trying to deal with these guys? Because we know that they were given sort of better powers towards the back end of last year to police their demonstrations. And when they were trying to walk slowly, the police seemed to be getting a bit better at dealing with them. Will this help the police, you think?
Yeah, I think it will. You know, I think we police by consent. That's been something that's been around since 1839. But, you know, it's the consent of the broader public. And I think that the consent of the broader public was undermined. It was being lost because the police were seen to have been too soft, not forceful enough. And I think you will see a more robust, more direct police activity over this coming summer.
Yeah, and if that gives them the opportunity to be more robust and it gives them the sort of licence, if you like, and permission, if you like, to do that, I think a lot of people will have their faith restored in the police.
I think you're right. You know, I think that when you go into central London, I went in a few times during various protests to see other events or to, you know, go to theatre or whatever, and to see the streets being taken over in the way that they were and the kind of activity that was going on and was being ignored or tolerated. It was quite upsetting, actually, to see London in that state. And I think that ordinary people who want to go do their shopping in Oxford Street, go to the parks, go about their business, don't want to see it continually disrupted week in, week out by these kinds of protests.
Yeah, exactly right. Because the fact is that the rules of engagement are not really fit for purpose now. Because if you have, for example, one of these Palestinian marches every single Saturday for 24 weeks, as we have just had, you know, that is not the same as an ordinary protest that would happen once in a while or once a year or, you know, on May Day or something like that, you know. So we need to have, surely, a better way of dealing with those kinds of events.
Well, I think you need that for a number of reasons, not least of which is the abstraction of police staff. You know, we've seen this week that I think it's 60 detectives are being taken off of murder squads to save money, to try and get the Met to meet its budget. Spent over £30 million policing these demonstrations, and that impacts on every community in London. You know, where you should have police officers out investigating major crime, investigating burglaries, giving public reassurance, they're spending all weekend walking around central London. And ironically, you know, when you look at something like the reduction of police officers on murder squads, the people that will be out there calling for justice for victims are very much, a lot of them, the same people that are out there demonstrating and taking police resource away right now.
Yeah, exactly right. Roy, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Roy Ramm there telling us his ideas of why the police should be able to be more empowered now by this particular scenario. He's former commander of specialist operations at the police, of course.